Here's what's coming up on today's show.
And I'll give you an example of an indication of success. Successfully integrating balance is when you go to work, you want to go to work. And when you go home, you want to go home.
This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I am your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today we have the privilege of talking to Paul Carroll. Paul is the CEO and founder of Avion Wealth, fast-growing elite wealth management firm headquartered in Houston, Texas. Paul started his business from scratch with no book in 2005 and is homing in on his first billion in assets under management. None of this would be possible without his focus on team development and work-life integration. Paul has built a team of millennial A players and since written a book for them called A Players with Intent. Welcome, Paul, to our show.
Travis, thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to get to know you in the pre-show. Tell us a little bit about your story of how you got to this point. I know it was a little bit of a journey, but give us the short synopsis of how you ended up here as CEO of Avion Wealth.
It's a long story, but I'll give you the short, slightly censored version. I was born in Dublin, Ireland, moved over to England when I was a young man with my family. And when I was 17 years old, I left that all behind and came to the United States in the fall of 1979 with $200 and a toothbrush. I had no idea what I was doing, but Travis, at 17, you don't really need to know. It didn't take too long before I ran out of airspeed, altitude, and ideas all at about the same time. And I needed a job. So I found myself enlisting in the United States Air Force as an aircraft electrician. Wasn't in the Air Force very long before I realized that that was not the right world for an entrepreneurial person like myself. But it did enable me to go to University of Maryland, and I did that full time while I was in the service. In fact, I extended my service 4 months so I could finish the degree, graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's degree in business from the University of Maryland. Well, I got out of the Air Force. I really was a stranger in a strange land. I'd spent most of my tour of duty actually overseas, didn't know what to do next. So I did what you do when you don't know what to do next. I went to graduate school. Texas A&M offered me a deal I couldn't turn down, and it was one of the smartest decisions I ever made. Got my master's in finance at A&M, and after I got out of A&M, I landed at Smith Barney. Smith Barney was now rolled up into Morgan Stanley. It had a great reputation, but really in those days, it was a bit of a high-end bucket shop, in my opinion. It wasn't a job that I thoroughly enjoyed. I was very disillusioned, and a very good friend of mine just showed up one day and said, "Hey, Paul, there's a shortage of airline pilots. Let's go learn how to fly." Like this is something you just do on a weekend. Did I say earlier, it's delightful being young and ignorant because it enables you to forge ahead. 7 jobs and 7,000 hours later, I did eventually get hired by Continental Airlines. And I moved pretty fast because I had weathered one of the longest hiring droughts in the history of the industry. But unfortunately, it was just 3 years later that the terrorists flew into the side of the World Trade Center and blew a hole in the side of the airline. And it wasn't long after that I was both transferred on my own dime to Houston and then subsequently notified that I would be furloughed. That was kind of the decision point for me, where I decided I'm not suited for seniority systems. I'm not suited for union environment. I mean, there are arguments for pro and con for a union in an industry like the airlines. Not all employers are safety conscious, but for me, it was not the work environment that I wanted to be in. And I decided, I told other people, if you think this is such a bad deal, do something else, that I would do something else. And I started my firm in 2005. It was called Efficient Wealth Management. And let me tell you something. I learned from that name, never let the owner name the company. Fast forward, we're learning as we go. I didn't have a single client when I started. I had a natural client base with the pilots. I was growing fairly well once I'd figured out the basics. And then 2008 came along, and a lot of people don't remember, but in 2008, all except Continental and Southwest Airlines went into bankruptcy. United actually spent years in bankruptcy. In fact, they amended the bankruptcy code because United abused bankruptcy so badly. And that amendment is colloquially known by many attorneys as the United Amendment to the bankruptcy code. And basically says after a certain number of filings, you're just going to get closed down. So we had to pivot. The bankruptcy in the industry, the freezing of the pension plan at Continental Airlines meant that our gravy train was coming to a rapid end. We pivoted to the energy industry, and I wrote the second of my books, Platform for Wealth, with a view to let's target energy professionals, energy executives. Well, this book I'm proud to say was my greatest failure because though it significantly helped the growth of the business, almost none of that growth was in the energy industry. We didn't really understand what was going on, nor did we care because we were growing like a weed. Many years Schwab would point us out as one of the fastest in the industry, and today we're under the heading of Best Managed Firm by Schwab. I think that's the top 5% of all the companies they work with. So after that pivot, we decided, let's grow in Austin. And we stretched our legs a little bit, stretched our wings out. It was a disaster. We were getting no new business in Austin, and we didn't understand why is it working so well in Houston and not working at all in Austin. And that caused us to look at where we're succeeding. What we found out is our success was in the C-suite and senior executives and successful business leaders. Even within the energy industry and the airlines, we started noticing the vast majority of our clients were management pilots, or they were management in energy, or they were C-suite executives. And so we realized we actually were succeeding despite all of our marketing efforts, and decided we'd rebrand the company. We rebranded the company at the end of 2019. It was official January 1st, 2020. And of course, it wasn't long before we were extremely distracted by COVID, and it totally forgot about this. And it was wonderful because it made the rebranding process almost perfectly seamless. It was a case of when everyone came up for oxygen, we were just Avion Wealth. And that was great. That was a great rebranding. It's been a great success. We've been growing like a weed. We have 16 people now, I believe. We're in the process of picking up a couple more. And my goal, and I think we're going to hit it, most of the outside observers agree, would be to hit $1 billion within the next 24 months. What's led to our success? What we've discovered is successful business leaders are frequently frustrated by lack of attention to detail and communication from their advisors. So at Avion, we built this wealth confidence plan and stay with them every step of the way so that they can focus on their unique ability, comfortable in the knowledge that they got the right team and the right advice. We also, though we have an extraordinary investment platform, we know all of our clients' number one concern is protecting their wealth. But where we try to differentiate is work with a team of experts using a consultative approach to not only help them protect their wealth, but also mitigate their taxes, take care of their heirs, protect their assets from being unjustly taken, and maximize the impact of charitable planning if that's important to them. And so now looking back, it's been a great success. I've enjoyed a lot of success. I'm very proud of the young team, and I couldn't have done it without them. And I've had to learn an awful lot about letting go and letting them take the baton into the future.
Love it. This is perfect for our discussion today. I mean, you talked about some really pivotal points, 2002, 2008, 2020. I know anyone in business at that time will remember, actually 2001, 2002, right? I didn't mention this to you in the pre-show, but I wanted to be a pilot. My entire life, I wanted to be a pilot. And I was planning to there was a degree at Utah Valley University I was looking into, planning to do that. And then when 9/11 happened, it's like, well, I'll just enlist. I'll just jump in now and I'll be a pilot. My uncle said, Travis, do you know what will happen to you if you enlist right now? I said, no. He's like, you'll never fly a plane. Like, it just never happen for you. You don't have a degree. You've got a couple semesters at a junior college. Go get a degree and then look at it. And he was flying National Guard. Well, he was in the National Guard. He would love to fly, but never made it there. So he was trying to keep me from making a mistake. And then I interviewed some airplane pilots and asked them some great questions. And one of them said, hey, you know what? Do you value working long hours, or do you want to be home with your family? And I said, the latter. And he said, don't be an airplane pilot. Like, no, you just squashed my dreams. I thought I would figure out how to get in. And actually, that was the whole start to me trying to figure out and really valuing this thing called balance. And I found the industry and was able to really try to create my own vision and future and have better balance. And obviously you've done both. You've been there. You bought both t-shirts, and it's nice to see you, back in the financial planning industry. But let's talk about balance. You've seen it from the cockpit, and you've seen it now from the CEO point. What has been your success in achieving balance?
Oh boy. Well, segueing back real quick to the pilot thing, aviation industry is a lottery industry. Everything is about luck and timing. There's an interesting article, and it's kind of tangentially relevant to the topic of this, by Harvard. The latest Harvard Business Review actually talks about it. It talks about skills-based hiring and how studies show there's almost no correlation between having a college degree and success in a number of professions. In the world, many countries don't have a general aviation industry, and so they literally take high school graduates that score super high in the right aptitude and train them from ground. British Airways, for the longest time, would only hire high school graduates. The only exception is if you had 2,000 hours in the military. And the point being, and it's something that we've actually learned here, is the college degree is just a union card. And if ever there was an industry where, in my opinion, there is zero need for a college degree, that is being a pilot. That doesn't mean that you don't need leadership training, that you don't need all sorts of skills building. But I've seen no evidence that people come in with a 4-year degree don't need the same training either. And we've actually started changing our insights into hiring, whereby essentially if it's not a client-facing employee, we don't care if they got a degree anymore. We test for the skills that we need. And we may start lowering the bar for our relationship managers, because some of the best we've got were battlefield promotions that maybe only have 3 years of college, but they're their best. And so it's an interesting issue when you deal with one of the challenges of being a business owner, and that is staffing in a world where there's 2 openings for every employee looking for a job. So forgive the segue, but I thought it was an interesting, relevant.
Good. It's very relevant. Yeah, I think for you then, being CEO, what really is the key to keeping that balance?
First, I don't really promote work-life balance. I promote work-life integration. We have a lot of young mothers who are professionals. We've never lost one to motherhood, which I think attests to the lengths we go to make things work for these young professionals. But they're all working extremely hard between juggling their children, juggling the responsibilities here, juggling husbands that often are from the 1950s and their perspective of how much a contribution they should be making to the effort. Not all, but integration really is how do you merge the different elements of your life so that you're happy with what you've built, your custom-built life. And I'll give you an example of an indication of success. Successfully integrating balance is when you go to work, you want to go to work. And when you go home, you want to go home.
Yeah. And I think this is a topic we come across nearly every day. This idea of work-life integration. Notice I didn't talk about work-life balance, just talked about balance in general. Because when I first started doing interviews for this book, Achieving Balance, that was one of the biggest kickbacks I got was like, oh, work-life balance is dead. It's old. And like, yeah, I know. I want to revive this idea of balance in general. So we look at life in 10 different areas. Work, career, that's one of them. It's not work and life. It's all these areas of life. And I've done this research with, over 750 interviews now with my team. And we found that number one is typically physical or spiritual health, followed by a relationship with spouse or family. Those top 3 or 4 are their highest priorities. So what we found is that balance is actually a feeling. It's not an equilibrium between work and life. It's a feeling of, do I have enough time? Have I spent enough time towards these highest priorities in my life? Even though you may be working a lot more hours, am I putting enough towards these areas? For you, what has been something that's allowed you to put enough time towards your highest priorities in life?
Well, I think that's a very insightful comment and question. And I'm going to tangentially answer it by saying, my goal for me and every single person who works for me is to have a custom-built life that meets all of my needs. And that's way easier said than done. And it means being willing to think of the value of your time and hire people to do things you can't stand to do or don't have time to do. It includes determining what your unique ability is. And Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach talks a lot about unique ability. Just because you're good at something doesn't make it your unique ability. I was an extraordinary electrician on the aircraft. In fact, in the Air Force, my WAPS test, which is a promotion score, and my AFSC, my career field, out of 60,000 people, was the highest in the entire field. I couldn't stand the job. Unique ability is you're not only good at it, you derive energy from that. So how do we find the unique abilities of all these people, and how do you find your unique abilities and build your job about it? Outside of your work, as well as inside, I found you have to be very, very deliberate about time management. And rituals. I believe fervently that discipline is the most abused concept. When people say you just need more discipline, they don't know what they're talking about. Discipline is like a NiCad battery. Now, most young people today don't even know what a NiCad battery is. But the old rechargeable batteries would work full bright and then die very suddenly. And that's what discipline does. Usually about 4, 5, 6 in the afternoon. So how many times have we gone, I'm going to drink less, or I'm going to eat less, or I'm going to not do this? And again and again and again in the evening they do it because they're relying on discipline. And they burn through that discipline at 3 o'clock. To replace discipline, I'm very focused on ritual. I have a morning ritual, and I'm actually polishing my evening ritual. I try to leave the office at 6 p.m. Now, if you knew me, you know that's actually quite an effort. I used to just consistently, for how many decades, work 12-hour days. Because at 7, I was ready. Now I'm trying to leave at 6. It's a discipline. If you force yourself to leave, you force yourself to make decisions as to what's most important. And then in the morning, I get up, I go to the gym. I don't care if I'm on vacation, I'm on a cruise ship, I go exercise. I need that energy. I do it in the morning because I know that's something that needs discipline and I won't have any in the evening. And of course, first steps are everything. If I have COVID, I'm putting on my gym gear in the morning. Now, I'm probably going to sit around and eat breakfast and take it right off. But I believe very much, and you've got to do the first step. That's got to be the ritual that's burned, like brushing your teeth. So when you don't brush your teeth in the evening, you know how you feel. Ugh. You got to be pretty drunk that night to blow it off. And so I'm very much about building those ritual habits that lead to the next step. I believe in reading every day. My standard, I used to teach people read 10 pages a day. Now I teach them read 1 because the habit's what's important. And if you're busy, read the 1 and go do what you got to do. But 9 times out of 10, you'll read 2, 3, 4, 30. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I love it. We talk about in the book Achieving Balance, we talk about work sweet spot, and it is a combo of looking at what do you like doing, what are you good at, and what pays well. And there's a unique exercise in the book to help you get to that. And I find that majority of business owners that I talk to, they're only in their sweet spot, which is their top 5 activities. I kind of say this is your zone. They're only in it about 20% of the day, 20% of the week and that's average.
And it's probably because they haven't identified their unique abilities. So
right.
My unique abilities are to lead, think, and touch. I know exactly what they are. And if I'm ever doing something that's not one of those 3 items, I actually like someone to be following me. So, term I just heard recently was never buffer alone. Never do the maintenance activities on your own. And I like to have someone on Zoom or some other way, literally, even just standing around watching what I'm doing if it's not my unique ability. And my goal is at some point that person will go, stop, I got this.
Yeah. Smart. That's a really great idea, Paul. But I love your ideas about rituals and time management, because time management was sold as the end all be all, which it isn't. If you don't know what your work sweet spot is, your unique ability,
I couldn't agree more.
Where you're at, because then it's just tips and tricks, and it's not a system, which a system is based in rituals, right? This is your, these are the steps, the process to complete it. Now, as we move forward and looking at, obviously you've got morning rituals, you got evening rituals, you have this greater than discipline idea, which I love, by the way. I think that's awesome. And I'm going to integrate that into my mentality, because you're right. I mean, the reason why you're tired at 4, 5, and 6 is because you're tired at 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
You're done. Your energy's zapped. I try to get out of here by 3 o'clock every day for me personally, because I know I'm zapped. I don't have any energy left to give. So anything I give after 3, it's fumes, and it's not going to be great work.
I actually heard this when reading an article about alcohol, but I think it's true about discipline, and it just so happens to relate to the topic that I was reading. And that is, most people who have an addiction to anything, when they fail, they are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And really the insight I got from that was, no, that's when you've run out of discipline. You're hungry, angry, lonely, tired. You don't have the discipline. You are now no longer responding to the world around you. You are reacting.
Yeah.
And in the case of an addict, that reaction is reaching out for an end to the pain.
Yeah. And it doesn't even matter.
It could be you yelling at someone, or you just, I'm not doing it. So energy management is everything. And I will add, to try to maintain my energy through 6, I'm not at all ashamed to tell anyone I ask. We have a nap room. After I do lunch, if I have time, which is 4 days out of 5, I'll take a 20-minute nap, power nap. And it's amazing what it does for me. I encourage everyone else to do it. No one else does. I don't know what that says. It's also become the nursing room for all the young mothers. So now there's a lock on it. And it's also my video room. So when you see the videos, that green screen is right above the sofa that you can't see. But energy management is absolutely crucial.
Yeah. Now you've grown your company. You've had some significant success here. Talk to us about your books. How have your books allowed you to really penetrate the markets you've been in? You talked to me first about, there's some that really were the biggest mistakes you ever made. But I think they led you to some of the greatest successes you've had, to really penetrate markets here. So let's talk about your latest books and how they've been able to help you do that and grow your business.
Sure, absolutely. So the first book I wrote was United Pilot's Flight Plan for Wealth. And that was when we were, actually it was, we did this at about 2008. We did the writing. So we hadn't actually figured out the pivot quite yet. We were still going through the pain. That was fantastic. It's a brilliant calling card. It was a very painful learning experience. I actually started with notes and a ghostwriter, and about 3/4 of the way through, it just wasn't working for me. Now, I know a lot of people do a book in a box and they'll get a ghostwriter and, basically none of the content's theirs. I wanted the content to have my voice and have my personality, for better or for worse, depending on your opinion. But, so I ended up having to start over, do a lot of cleanup and finish the book myself. It was a great, great tool for credibility building. When we did the pivot, we went on the platform for wealth. So I think the process of writing a book is very important for someone to understand. If you're doing a book for credibility as well as content, the interviews for that book are a big part of the process. And that's what we do. We do a lot of interviews. And it's actually symbiotic in that not only am I developing these relationships, but I'm getting intel I was missing. It's actually amazing how much you can't get on the internet or from other people's books. And so all of these books have a lot of fresh meat in them just because I was out in the street talking to the people on the street. The third book was collaborative. This was when I learned another way to not write a book. We actually had a series of conversations, my expert team that I work with, on the 4 areas of advanced planning that we talk about. And it took so much editing to make this thing legible. So it's our content, my voice, but it's very hard to turn a conversation into a monologue. And it's even harder to keep it as a conversation and have it be readable. It was very successful. By the time I'd read 3, I ran into an author, a publisher in Austin. I think I told you before. And I self-publish these books. I'm not ashamed of the fact. She kind of looked down her nose at me. She was a small publishing company in Austin. Oh, you self-publish. Like, that was toxic. To which I told her, listen, every single one of my books has meant over $1 million in revenue to me. Can you say that about your authors? And if you do this right, they should be worth more. My 4th book, I was writing a book for 2 years in Austin about the tech industry there. And we pivoted, as I told you in my story, and decided that was a mistake. But I'd interviewed people for 2 years and had promised a book, so I had to write one. And the book I'm in some ways most proud of was A Players with Intent. And it was written for young professionals, millennials, and now even post-millennial. We got Gen Z. I give this to every employee, and I have had corporations literally buy boxes of these books. So this has been quite a success, way beyond my imagination. It's got nothing to do with wealth management, but it's a great gift. I love to give something whenever someone gives me their time. And then my last book, which was pretty much aligned with the new branding, was Tips and Traps Selling Your Business While Maximizing Your Wealth. This was an awful lot of work. I believe, I'm biased, that it's an extremely good book. I read a dozen books on the topic before I started. I interviewed 40 people, business brokers and others. And this book looks very different from every other one that I read. Most of the books don't really address the emotional aspect of your baby and selling your baby and watching someone ride off to the sunset with it. What do you do next? And that totally pollutes the process in a way that just knowing the mechanics doesn't work. And so a lot of the book talks about this, and a lot of the book talks about prepping your business for sale, even if you don't have a buyer, or even if you don't have a date or a plan. Because the process of having it ready for sale will do 2 things. 1, it'll be more efficient and more profitable. And 2, if someone does pop up, let me tell you, every business is for sale. I will tell you, everyone, I'm not selling my business, and it's true. I have no plan on selling my business. My succession plan is sell pieces to my team. Well, it's for sale. We get evaluation every time we sell a little bit more to the team. I get an appraisal from an outside. So yeah, my business is for sale, even if I'm selling it internally. And honestly, if someone showed up with a check that was twice as big as they should, it probably wouldn't be for sale internally anymore. It would just be sold. Fortunately for clients and my team, that's not likely to happen. But whenever someone says their business is not for sale, pardon the language, but I call bullshit.
What I've loved about talking with you with this process is you haven't written 1, you've written 5, and so many people stop. You even though you didn't maybe have the greatest success with book 1 or 2 or whatever, you kept going and you kept figuring this out, and you've got the ingenuity to do so. You're a visionary and you want to make this happen, but you've also interviewed people. We've interviewed over 250, business owners for this book.
You interview a lot more than I do. And that's shame on me.
No, it's good. I have a team doing it. Like I said, hey, I'm done interviewing. I'll let you guys interview. And, and then including podcasts like this, I'm always getting great content for my next book. And, I have a PhD. I know how to do research, but nothing like doing your own research with individuals, qualitative research.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is just fascinating.
And if you'd have told me this 10 years ago, I would have sure.
Yeah.
There's so much good stuff out there. I can read it. I can learn it, repackage it. You're absolutely true. There's stuff in this book that I never read anywhere, but I heard from brilliant people.
Yeah. And I honestly, the first thing that I tell my clients when they come to me, and Travis, I want to have balance, but I want to grow my business. Great. Let's get your balance underway, and let's help you with your business by starting to interview ideal clients, centers of influence, who are around your ideal client for the book you want to write. Because I know you have an idea, you have a solution right now that you could tell me, the 10 steps to this and the 5 steps to that. But as you mentioned earlier, as you start interviewing others about what they're actually dealing with, you may find out information that can completely change the direction of your book. Like the fact that you talked about the psychological aspects of selling your business and, watching your baby sail away. That has nothing to do with evaluation. It has nothing to do with taxes. It has nothing to do with, dollar cost averaging and profit sharing. Like, none of those things are mentioned. The psychology of it, though, as you're interviewing people, like, that just goes to show probably why your book has done so well is because you've interviewed those who have dealt with it. So
And they've
I love
all
that.
actually been great for business.
Yeah.
Sometimes it wasn't what I expected. Like Platform for Wealth was fantastic for the business, just wasn't fantastic for bringing energy engineers in. Now, I don't write but one book every 2 to 3 years. And the reason is, I joke, it takes 2 to 3 years to forget how much it hurts to write one. And then I try to not write unless I got something to say. So it's good to have something to say, and you'll have a lot more passion and drive that will get you through the rough spots of the project. I don't know if you'd like, but I can talk a little bit about the method I've developed with experience on how to write the book most efficiently.
Yeah. Happy for you to share real quick how you've been able to do that.
And I'll try to keep it brief. I'm not good at brief, but
You're fine.
doing my best. What I do is I do the interviews, and while I'm doing the interviews, I start sketching out the outline. In a sense, I stop at bullet points. I never write. I stop at bullet points. And I want to have enough content and bullet points, notes, and details that I can stand at my desk and dictate a chapter beginning to end off those points. And I use rev.com. There's other Copy Talk and other, I particularly like rev.com. I dictate the text. Then I send it out to Proofread Now. There's 2 levels of proofreading they do. One is if you read what rev.com says, you're like, this guy's illiterate. It always reads worse than it sounds. Proofread Now will clean it up, but it's still very hard to listen to. I may have them do a level 2 proof, but rarely do I do that. Then I take it back, and then I've got something that I can clean up and fix. I've got a scaffolding that I can work with. I'm never stuck with writer's block because now I'm not writing, I'm fixing. And I will fix content more than style. Then after that, I'll send it back to Proofread Now for level 2 proofing, where they're really getting into grammar and style. Then and only then is it ready for an editor. I got a great editor in Austin, Texas. I don't remember her name off the top of my mind, but if anyone reaches out, I'll give it to them. And she eviscerates the work. She makes me feel like a 10th grade English student, but she does super work. In fact, if it wasn't for her, A Players with Intent would have been awful because I had attitude permeating the book. I didn't even realize it. I would read attitude. We have biases and a lot of complaints about millennials. In fact, I've got no complaints about millennials, and yet still I had attitude coming through. The editor was able to totally eliminate that and frankly save the book. Then we'll do another proof. And I even picked my own cover. 99 Designs builds all my covers. There's a trick to 99 Designs. Don't let the competitors see each other's product. Prepay, guarantee the payment, and get the highest level of service. You want it to be good. I've learned this the hard way. Don't let them see each other's work or they will start getting into groupthink. And then BookBaby, and actually BookBaby used this book in their advertising, which I thought was interesting given that they didn't design the cover, but that's just entertaining. And that's it. And
love it.
And you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
We've got a person in the office. That's her job to coordinate the outsourced vendors. I'm going to take care of it.
Yeah. I did something very similar. Interview, did the outline, rev.com, had an editor and even a proofreader at both. 99 Designs who I use for my cover. I love it. And now, those who need that service, who don't want to have someone, they don't know how to do it. We actually have the process for them. And I created this company, Make Time Media, on the back of my book here. And I just have a person that runs the whole thing, the operation. So we can actually outsource that. Outsourcing. And it saves you tons of time. It saves you a ton of energy. If someone's already done it well,
right.
You know how to do it.
I'm the author. I'm not necessarily the writer.
Right. Yeah, you're the author. Exactly.
But it's my voice. I'm enough of the author. It's my content. It's my voice.
Yeah, I love it. You're doing the right way to self-publish the books and get the content out there. I love that you're all about, growing with books, and love that others are seeing this now. They know, most advisors and business owners I talk to know they need to have a book if they don't have one, to be basically the influencer, right, in their niche. And there's so much more to this, but I'm glad that we've had a chance to, converse about it and discuss how you.
A couple of wrap items I would mention, especially after tips and traps. Less is more. You don't need a 200-page book, even though tips and traps is 185. Yeah, it's too much almost. Less is more. And if you've got enough for a 200-page book, you've got enough for 2 books. The third thing is, there's a case to be made for white papers. If it's a tight topic, it may not need a book. A white paper will give you 80% of the value of a book, believe it or not. You can email it as well as give them hard copies. And the final thing is, never underestimate the value of a hard copy. Everyone's about a PDF. I want a PDF. I want a PDF. I want a Kindle version. I can't tell you how many clients and other centers of influence office I've gone into, and a book I gave them 8 years ago is on their bookshelf. Now, I have no idea if they ever even did any more than scan it. But for 8 years, they've had my name in their face on their bookshelf.
Precisely.
And you can't buy that kind of advertising. And the last thing I'd say is the reason to do it is because most people won't.
Yeah, that's huge.
No, everyone knows.
It sets you apart.
A great tool.
Sets you apart. And I think that's the key here to your visionary leadership and growing, your practice while keeping your balance, letting other people do the things that, again, are not your unique ability in your sweet spot, but allow you to still have, the authorship and run this and create the growth that you've had. Thank you for being on the show today. This has been a pleasure, Paul, to speak with you and see the success of your company and see the ritual leader that you are, the balanced leader that you are to help your company move forward. I know that there's been a lot of content here that I'm sure our listeners have had a great time with. If they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out to you, Paul?
They can go to my website, www.avionwealth.com. That's probably your best bet.
Perfect.
There's a contact us field in there that put in the question. We have, obviously, email and phone number 281-528-1200 and paul@avionwealth.com.
Awesome. Great to have you on today, Paul. Thank you, everyone else, for listening, for subscribing, for liking our content and helping us with the great ratings that we do have. Share this with someone who needs to learn about anything that we've discussed today. And until next time, remember, live life on purpose.